Slowly but surely, the era of fossil fuels is coming to an end. Estimates for oil, natural gas and coal reserves range from 50 to 120 years. Most European countries are heavily dependent on the energy import. In the long term, without a strong alternative to fossil fuels, it is very unlikely that the old continent will be able to preserve the current standard of living and the existing level of energy consumption. It is quite debatable whether renewable sources of energy can replace the so-called traditional ones. There are speculations that a new form of energy that can save the planet already exists. Maybe it does, but the only problem is nobody has seen it so far. I'm your host Kasim, and thanks for joining me for another KJ vid. In this video we will discuss traditional versus alternative energy. I'd also like to take this opportunity to encourage you to visit our website kjvids.co.uk and sign up to our subscription plan, which will give you unlimited access to our content and the full transcripts of all of our video reports and a lot more analysis. Presently, approximately 80% of global energy comes from burning fossil fuels. Renewable energy sources such as the sun, wind and biomass collectively provide only about 7% of the world's energy needs. Nuclear energy currently provides 6% of the world's energy supplies. Solar and wind technology, even after 50 years of subsidies, produce less than 1% of the world's energy. At this point, the only alternative to fossil fuels has been around renewable energy sources, which are expected to play an important role in this century. According to researcher and writer Tony Pike, they will need to not only keep up with the increasing population growth, but also to go beyond these demands in order to meet future energy needs and consider the natural environment. Pike claims that renewables could provide around 25% of energy needs in some countries, but much of the generating capacity would have to be duplicated in the form of fossil or nuclear plant for use when there is little sun or wind. According to her research, in the European Union government's interference with electricity markets and enforce the use of inferior electricity sources such as wind and solar, this will result in subsidies, taxes, feed-in tariffs, materials and labour, and ultimately force the consumer to pay the ultimate costs. Officially, around 27% of Germany's electricity is in the form of renewables, and the goal is at least 80% by 2050. The major European economy has reportedly paid tens of billions of euros to subsidise solar panels and windmills. In spite of that, the country is still using coal and is strongly pushing for the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which should provide Russian natural gas to Germany. Also, in the past 3 years, 53% of all imported coal came to Germany from Russia. In addition, the EU is importing a significant percentage of electricity. The energy theorist Alex Epstein argues that German leaders are quite aware that the country cannot rely on the renewables. Author Victor Katona recently wrote that if Germany is to remain an industrial powerhouse, it would need to keep on importing hard coal, as it remains an indispensable element of steel making. Germany, as well as France, plans to phase out and decommission all of their nuclear power plants. Officially, they intend to switch to renewable sources of energy. If that does not work, these countries, along with many other European nations, might return to pre-industrial state. Norway is excluding Russia, the greatest European producer of oil. However, the country is expected to run out of fossil fuels in the next 30 years. The United Kingdom has oil reserves to sustain production for the next 20 years. Since Germany is shutting down its coal mines, Poland remains the only EU country with significant coal reserves. It has proven reserves equivalent to 191.2 times its annual consumption. Due to such performances, if an energy crisis occurs in the future, Poland will likely side with the United States rather than with Berlin and Brussels. Neighbouring Ukraine is also a coal-rich country. However, most of its coal is located in the Donbas region, which is currently controlled by the Russian-backed Donetsk People's Republic and Lugansk People's Republic. There is, however, another energy-rich European region. It is out of the EU and will likely remain that way. The mainstream media and politicians call it the Western Balkans. In reality, all of the so-called Western Balkan countries are located in the central and southern parts of the Balkan Peninsula. There are reportedly plans to build new coal-fired power plants across the region, even though this will make it more difficult for the so-called Western Balkan countries to meet renewable energy generation and emission reduction targets. Also, countries that aim to build new coal power plants are looking to Chinese finance. It is expected that 70% of all coal plants in Western Europe will be phased out in the next 5 years. Eurelectric estimates that by the end of the 2020s, coal will remain in place only in a minority of markets such as Germany, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Czech Republic and Slovenia, which means that the coal-rich Balkan countries can play a major role in energy supplies. According to an analysis by the Energy Community Secretariat, lignite-fired power plants constitute between 50 and 90% of electricity generation in all of the so-called Western Balkan countries. Albania is the only exception, as it produces virtually all of its electricity from hydropower. It is worth mentioning that France recently refused to give the green light to Albania and Bosnia and Herzegovina for the EU membership talks. There are speculations that the United States is not allowing these countries to join the EU, as Washington wants to have full control over this energy-rich territory, especially when oil and gas becomes scarce. In addition to that, Richard Grenell, the US President Donald Trump's special envoy for the Belgrade-Pristina talks, recently urged the two Balkan rivals to resume railway service. According to Grenell, who is also the current US ambassador to Germany, direct railway connection is important for both sides. It is, however, more important for the United States, as it already controls most of the coal production in Kosovo and is pushing to have flawless transit to Western Europe. Kosovo is estimated to be home to the world's 5th largest reserves of brown coal or lignite, and its authorities gave the Canadian-based energy firm Envidity Energy the right to search for coal on more than a third of Kosovo's total territory. It is worth mentioning that the company is chaired by retired US General Wesley Clark. The US is also pushing for some sort of a Balkan Union. In early October 2019 in Novi Sad, Serbia, leaders from Albania, Serbia and North Macedonia signed onto an initiative that has been dubbed Mini Schengen, after the EU's passport and duty-free zone. Trump's envoy strongly backed the initiative as a way to jumpstart the free movement of people and commerce. Whether it is coincident or not, the Balkan leaders signed the document shortly after the meeting they had with the American diplomat. Since the three countries, as well as Montenegro and Bosnia and Herzegovina, are energy rich, it is likely that they will stay in the US sphere of influence. In 476 CE, Romulus, the last of the Roman emperors in the west, was overthrown by the Germanic leader Odoacer, who became the first barbarian to rule in Rome. The order that the Roman Empire had brought to Western Europe for 1,000 years was no more. The fall of Rome affected the European society in many aspects. The main problem was the loss of technological and economic progress. It took centuries for the West to recover and form a new order and civilization. The old continent, especially its west, can face a similar destiny after the era of fossil fuels, unless a sustaining alternative is invented. That's all for today guys, thanks for watching another KJ vid. I hope you enjoyed this video and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Will we remove our dependency from fossil fuels in the future? Please don't forget to visit our website kjvids.co.uk and subscribe to one of our plans, which will give you unlimited access to our content and the full transcripts of these reports. Thanks for watching again, and see you next time.